must again apologize for missing that quick take segment on the show. We've been able to resolve those technical issues. Let's go straight to Business Citizens Forum this morning. We'll continue with the quest to look for peace in search of peace for this country, lasting, durable peace that can that can stand the test of time. And one of the main issues, it has been identified by several people, even though those set of people, many of them will want to run away from either discussing it publicly or even being seen as being a champion of such problems of the country. And what am I talking about? Religion in particular. It took us a very long time, in fact, after serious damage has been done to the state, to human beings, to properties by the Boko Haram sect, before some people begin to see it as a mere terrorist act and criminal action, even though we still have some people who still want to stake with that position that it is a religious issue. We have a crisis all around. People who say the Southwest appears to be peaceful, but we are not prone from religious incidences. In fact, it's getting deeper and deeper within the Southwest region. The communal living in terms of whichever boundless religion in the country appears to be disappearing. Most things publicly are interpreted on religious basis, even actions and mere statements that will have just passed on, washed away by the air, will still be attached with a religious connotation depending from which angle you are standing. It's getting to a stage where we even opt for our own sect member to become our leader, who governs us, who becomes our councillor or representatives. Sometimes it's also determined by your religion. Well, these are issues that will not bring a lasting development to the country. Maybe that is why one Nigerian notable, Professor Choyinka, came out to issue that statement. Well, people are also seeing from another angle. Choyinka is not a non-religious person. In actual fact, he has professed atheism as his own belief. But whatever belief he professes, the truth about his religion is encroaching gradually into a peaceful existence. That's what we'll be looking at this morning. Trust us, we are never shy away from discussing, no matter how volatile it is. Once it exists, yes, it is in existence. We must find a way to tackle it. A problem identified, yes, you should have a way of solving that minimizes the effect of that problem. That's what we are looking at this morning on Citizens Forum. Dele Ayodo is my name.
And I am Chienye. Egwuonwu. Good morning. Okay, we're looking at the religious crisis, which could be a threat to national growth, national development. And of course, we should know that security and peace are keys to any national development.
All right, and we have with us Dr. Jendele Hungbo to do this with us. Good morning, my brother.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chienye. How are you?
All right. I don't want to know which religion you
practice
right now, but
I'm a Christian.
Well, no,
he said he doesn't want to know.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Okay. You are a Christian.
Yeah.
Has this affected your performance, your relationship with people? First, let's begin from there.
Okay. I think it would be wrong of anybody, no matter what religion you profess, to relate with other human beings on the basis of their faith. It would also be wrong for anyone or any human being or any religious leader or any individual anywhere in the world to assume that there will come a day when all of us would belong to the same persuasion in terms of spiritual beliefs. Whether you like it or not, the world will continue to be structured along the lines of different kinds of beliefs, different kinds of persuasions, whether you're talking about political ideologies, whether you're talking about religious beliefs, whether you're talking about values, about the way we understand what life itself is. So it goes a little bit even beyond the question of the spiritual. It involves questions of orientation in terms of, how do you grow up? What system produces you? What kinds of interpretations do you give to life events? And what kinds of interpretations do you give to things that are beyond the physical? And take, for example, when you sleep and you have a dream, you are likely, before you even seek, before you go into whether I want to seek an imam's interpretation, a pastor's interpretation, a prophet's interpretation, a dream reader's interpretation to this, you first of all want to process that on your own to see what has happened. What could this mean? What can I make of what I have experienced? And so, it's my understanding is that we're never going to agree on questions of religion, but we have to make sure that if we all need to enjoy this life, then we need to relate with people on the basis of their humanity, not on the basis of the religion they believe in.
Okay, having said all that, having said all this, why then do we have religious crisis in Nigeria?
Yeah, we have religious crisis in Nigeria because of several reasons. And one principal reason that I often identify is the question of gullibility. People seem to be extremely gullible. And so because of that, it is easy for people to deceive them with things that they themselves probably don't even believe in. Or simply because, that's one reason. Another reason is also that we have misunderstood the idea of what a religion is. Because you can be religious and not be godly. Now, if there's godliness, if everyone believes in one God, no matter what name you call him, there's not likely to be the kind of crisis that you find in the country today, which arise out of understanding or misunderstanding on the religious front. Again, when people go to their mosques, their churches, or their shrines, and their leaders tell them certain things, do they get back home to process those things? Do they ruminate over those things before they either adopt them as ways of life or before they believe in them? It's going to be difficult for me, for example, for a pastor, for example, to tell me to hate a Muslim friend, or for an imam, if I were a Muslim, to tell me to hate a Christian friend. Because in my life, I've had friends who are Muslim, who have done even better, whose character I would even like to emulate in certain areas. And I've also had Christian friends whose character I would not like to emulate in certain areas, because I look at the things they do and I feel like, no, this is not what it should be. But if the goal that each of us has is to make life, or to make this world a better place for all of us to live in, then we shouldn't be having the kind of crisis we have. And so the question of gullibility is there. To some extent, yes, illiteracy. When we talk about that illiteracy, we can expand that on several fronts. We can.
When you talk about gullibility, illiteracy, in Nigeria, religion is a state issue. Those who
ordinarily, it shouldn't be a state issue.
So are we saying our founders, our leaders, are gullible and illiterate for permitting religion to become a state affair?
Actually, our leaders never made religion a state affair. There's no Nigerian constitution that has proclaimed any particular religion for this country. Go and check. From the beginning of Nigeria, from 1914 up to today, there's no single amendment of the constitution.
The reality and the truth.
No, we'll come to the reality, Dele. Just hold on a little bit. We'll come to the reality. Now, there's no constitution that has made religion a state issue in Nigeria. So Nigeria is not a religion. It's not a theocratic entity. Nigeria is a secular entity, and that is what the constitution proclaims. But when we talk about the leaders and the question of religion, it is so sad that so-called leaders in Nigeria use religion as a refuge for mediocrity. They use it to cover up their inadequacies. And that's what it is. And it's also unfortunate that the citizens, the people, have not been able to see through the facade that they offer us all the time in the name of religion. You don't need to be a Christian to be a good president. Neither do you need to be a Muslim to be a bad president. You don't even need to be a traditional worshipper, what people call pagans wrongly, what people wrongly call pagans, to be a good president or a bad president. A good person is a good person, irrespective of what faith he or she proclaims. But the point is this: when people find that they cannot compete with other people, they start looking for markers of difference which they can use to attract sympathy from certain groups which they ordinarily would not have if they didn't identify themselves with that group. So that's when you begin to hear, oh no, I'm a Christian, you must follow me because you're also a Christian. I'm a Muslim, you must follow me because before you're also a Muslim. Now, isn't it unfortunate that in Nigeria, the constitution does not recognize any religion as a state religion, yet we find governors, local government chairmen, senators who use state funds to send people on pilgrimage every year. When this regime, the Buhari regime came, the first thing, one of the first things he said, which made some people happy in this country, was that there was not going to be state-sponsored pilgrimages anymore. And some of the states also said similar things and people were rejoicing. But shortly after that, they began to lower exchange rate for people who wanted to embark on pilgrimage. Religion is a purely private affair, and that's what the Nigerian Constitution recognizes. And it should be a purely private affair. If you want to worship your God, you should have the resources to worship your God. You shouldn't use our commonwealth, what belongs to everyone else.
From the way you speak, Jendele, it's like we are pretending or undermining the power of the influence of religion. In the last 20 years, if you check the records of yearly, the 10 most influential Nigerians, there have been not less than 4 religious or traditional leaders involved from the recognized religion. So if we have these people regularly, constantly being named as influential Nigerians, then is it not a pretense when we want to say religion does not have a strong base in our governance in this country?
Okay, now when you talk
policy making,
when you talk about most influential people, you should look at what rating agency is talking about that influence. That's number one. Number two, influential in what? That's another thing we need to look at. Now, we've talked about why has religion been leading to different forms of crisis here and there in Nigeria. And we have identified some of these issues to be illiteracy, gullibility, the commercialization of religion, and so on and so forth. Most of these rating agencies, they look at the bank accounts of human beings and tell you they are very influential. That is one point. So if you're talking about, for instance, you take Ebony magazine, and you're talking about the 100 most influential people in Africa, or the 100 most influential people in Nigeria. Don't forget that first and foremost, if you talk about the 100 most influential people in Africa, the likelihood that there will be 10 Nigerians is very high, because the percentage of the population of Africa that Nigeria takes is very huge. We're talking about a population of 180 million. And there's no other country in this continent that can beat that. So you already capture like 20% of what you want to rate. And so you from every 10 African, you are likely to find 4 Nigerians. So if you look at it from that perspective, that's one point. The second point is that what are the indices that have been used to talk about this?
For getting mentioned at all, that shows the potency of the office they hold.
Exactly. But don't forget that even if you go to the if you look at the history of the world generally, there has always been a conflict between religious leadership and state leadership. But when you now sit down to structure a running process, what system do you want to run? That's when you begin to sift it out to say, okay, you remember that at a time, religious leaders held both political and spiritual power, even in Rome. But it was separated at some point to say, let the state run separately. Let religion also run separately. And that was what we copied. So we could have, if we had copied that and we sat down together to document that in our constitution, why can't we follow that line? That's a question we need to begin to ask ourselves. Now, talking of this influence, the question of influence is always about how much followership do you have. That can happen without having any recourse to the state, without the state being involved in that. The state should be the state, and spiritual leadership should remain spiritual leadership. You know, it saddens my heart at times when you see spiritual leaders overreaching themselves simply because the political leaders do not know what to do. They have.
Is it that they don't know what to do?
They don't.
They find comfort in using those religious sentiments to.
No. They don't know what to do because they believe that with the kind of followership that these religious groups have, if they fail to perform, those ones can offer them a kind of cover-up. That's number one. Another thing is that why is every governor, every chairman of local government, every senator, every president always running to the church when there's a problem, or running to the mosque when there's a problem? I mean, it's, you know, you at times begin to wonder if, as Nigeria, we actually know the kind of identity we want to catch out for ourselves as a country, or the kind of identities we want for ourselves as citizens of Nigeria. If someone meets you today and your name is Dele, it's very simple, okay? He doesn't know whether you are Christian or you are Muslim. But your name can be Rahman and you be a Christian. Have you not seen people before who tell you that, oh, you are a Christian and you call yourself Rahman, go and change your name? Because we have fundamental issues, fundamental problems, especially people who bear their indigenous names. All the Shangowanwas want to become Jesuwanwa, Oluwawanwa, things like that. I mean, those are personal things. No problem. You can do that because you have a right to do it. But what we are saying is that let it not become a factor upon which the state decides how to relate with you.
Now, let's try and look at some other countries who find a way out of it. Developed countries, for instance, you just said in Italy, the Catholic remains strong as we speak. That's why they age long. And of course, the Pope is both a religious and but they still separate and work effectively. I'm talking of the Catholic and the leadership of the Catholic mission in Italy. In UK, of course, the Anglican. We know most times the Queen is involved. Government is almost a state religion, but they still find even in less developed countries. Let's look at Myanmar, where the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader there, but they're still working. Even the Buddhist monks in India and all other. Why is it that difficult for Nigeria to still operate that kind? You are a religious order, you have your own lane, and then the state has its own lane, and just work smoothly without anything. How can we resolve this?
I think the reason why it's difficult for us in Nigeria to run as the way things happen elsewhere is because we lack sincerity. That is number one. Number two is that the use of religion as an instrument for privilege is also a problem. Now, when
that's my in UK, it is still called Church of England.
Yeah, it's a Church of England.
So, but even at that, it still has its own route, its own lane.
Exactly. But the problem here is that in the UK, you cannot use the Church of England to get any privilege from anybody, especially when it concerns government. I mean, the government is going to deal with you on the basis of the fact that you are a citizen of this country, you have your civic responsibilities, and the state also owes you certain obligations. And that you get without necessarily professing membership of any religious line. So if Dele and Chienye come here, and Dele is Roman Catholic, and Chienye is Anglican from the Church of England, it's not going to give Chienye any advantage over Dele. And that's what we're talking about. You cannot tell me for it. Do you know that in Nigeria, people go as ridiculous as talking about the population of students in a public school? We don't have enough Christian students here. We don't have enough Muslim students here. When are we don't have enough pagan students here. Which society makes progress with those kinds of mediocrity or those kinds of unbelievable identity markers? When you go to England, Dele, a student is a student. Nobody talks about Muslim student this, Christian student that, Aboriginal student this. No one talks about all those things.
That's the area. Sorry, Chair, 1 minute. That's the area in which I said the Nigerian state now. Unfortunately, the constitutional state is a circular state, but the reality is that because even in private sector government, so hardly will you want to have any deal with government, fill any form, you'll be asked your religion.
Yeah.
That by implication is that the state or the person who wants to do is interested in knowing what your religion. That is what the followership is said. We're talking about leaders now, the followership. The most likelihood, the way it goes is if we are in the ministry, let's say this is a department in the ministry, and there are about 4 or 5 of us here now. The 4 are known to be either Muslim or Christian. You have religion, and one, maybe myself, I'm known to be an atheist, so I don't. People will tend to see the 4 of you who have religion as more responsible than me, and then we want to deal with you than deal with me. So the followership issue itself, how can we incorporate it to knowing that this does not work or may not work?
Yeah, I'll come to the followership issue shortly, but before that, let me address this question from the point of the illustration that you gave, the illustration of you filling a form, and then they ask you what religion are you, Christian, are you Muslim? In most cases, it's only those 2, which is unfortunate because our forms should recognize more religions. You can be a Nigerian and be a Buddhist. You can be a Nigerian and be anything else other than being Muslim and Christian. Because in those forms, I've never even seen anywhere where they say a traditional believer or anything. And I don't see anywhere where they say, well, none. It's always those 2. So, and you find people who are Shango worshippers and Ogun worshippers, or Oya worshippers, or Batala worshippers, they will just pick one of the 2. Just for the sake of official documentation. Now, but those are just demographic information. You see, you can have that in a form as a demographic information. For example, I will expect that if you put that in a form, say for a driver's license, you should go further to say which denomination. Because if I have a driver's license and I'm a Christian, and I'm also at the same time a Jehovah's Witness, and God forbid if there's an accident, from my driver's license, if I go to an hospital, the doctors should be able to know, oh, this guy by his faith doesn't take blood transfusion. Okay, if those are the kind of things we're looking for, perhaps one will understand, because these are demographic information that can help you to take certain decisions for the progress of everyone. But no, that's not what we do. You bring these forms and then you take Christian. Okay, put the ones that are Christian here, put the ones that are Muslim here, and then you begin to use those
if I pick 4 Christians,
if I pick 4 Christians, I must pick 5 Muslims or 4 Muslims as well. Forgetting that their religion might not determine their competence for what you want to use them for. Those are the issues we have. Now, coming to your issue on the followership issue, I often tell people that most of the time we blame our leaders for being the cause of some of these problems. But again, we should also begin to look at the followers, because we, the followers, produce the leaders. That's the first point. The second point is that we make moguls out of all our leaders. And let me explain what I mean. When someone comes into office, whether into political office or religious office, is a pastor in the church, he has some spiritual gift, we begin to over-celebrate them. I'm not saying don't celebrate your leaders, but we over-celebrate them. It becomes things like, if not you, then no one else can. You see, we are all human. The moment you treat human beings like that, they have the tendency to get swollen-headed. And when they get swollen-headed, they also have the tendency to make graver mistakes. And that's where the issues are. If you become a councillor today in your village, Dele, the number of people who come to your father's compound will increase unbelievably. And when they come there, any day you do something wrong and they read in the news or they hear somewhere else, they're going to say, no, don't mind them. You can go on and do all the wrongest things in the world or all the worst things in the world.
Is our kinsman.
With our kinsman, we don't care. You see, when you begin to over celebrate human beings, and I take you to the illustration by George Orwell in Animal Farm. What destroyed Animal Farm was the over celebration of those who emerged after they sent away the two-legged creatures and took upon their own leadership with their fellow four-legged creatures. And so we all these are things where we should learn lessons from. So we over celebrate them. That's one aspect of it. So the followership needs a reorientation. We need to know how to deal with our leaders, how to keep them calm so that they don't get too swollen-headed and start misbehaving. And when they misbehave, we should be ready to correct them, to tell them, hey, no, this is not what we expect from you. Rather than be playing the kind of psychophancy you find around, which is, in fact, the psychophancy in religious circles is even more serious than the psychophancy you find in political circles, and that's unfortunate.
Okay, what are other causes of the religious crisis that we have in Nigeria?
There's too much money in religion these days. That's another thing we should talk about. It's because all the religious groups, because they have various sources of funding, which they never had in the past. Government patronage brings money. The people also willingly, at times unwillingly, give more than they should give. Churches talk about sow the first seed, bring all your salaries for 1 month. We take it and you can go hungry. It's not a problem. International funding is coming. The world is becoming a global village. You can start a small church here or a small mosque here, and you go on the internet and people wire money into your account, especially if you are ready to go along the particular ideologies for which they have gathered funds, which they want to propagate all over the world. So they see you as a post, as an outpost for that ideology, and then you begin to move on and on and on. Because you find one other thing that is also government's lack of interest in regulating certain activities. This is a very difficult point to make, because I know that people will argue, no, don't regulate religion. Don't touch religion. Yes, you may not regulate religion in the sense that you cannot regulate what people believe. But if the activities are beginning to give a sign of potential danger, I don't think government should stay away from regulating those kinds of things. So the factors are too many. We can't name all of them today.
Okay, well, what kind of regulation? For instance, now we have two issues that are bringing controversy within the country now. The corporate governance code issue is one, and then the issue of tax.
Yeah.
Whether
churches or mosques should be taxed or not.
These are supposed to be a corporate introduction into behaviors of these people. So what makes these two wrong?
Yeah. No. Let me give you a kind of a general response as to what kind of regulation. Then I'll come to the two examples that we have given. Now, when you talk about what kind of regulation, I'll just make an illustration. If you build a house in a banner housing estate, you are entitled to all the peace you can get there. If a church beside your house puts their speaker outside and they do night vigils and you cannot sleep, government should be able to, for example, regulate noise pollution. They're not saying the church cannot worship, but the noise pollution aspect of it can be regulated. That's one example. Another example is that if there's going to be a public gathering and government feels that this public gathering can lead to a breakdown of peace, I think government has a responsibility to regulate in that kind of situation. Now let's come to the corporate governance code that you talk about. Now, in the corporate governance code is not, as I say it, a regulation of any religious organization, because the corporate governance code relates to charities. Once you start a church or a mosque and you incorporate it at the Corporate Affairs Commission as a charity with trustees, then you fall under that category of organizations that are required not to have a trustee or not to have a leader or a leadership of the trustee serving more than 20 years. So it's not as if government just went out to look for one law simply to deal with religious organizations. So whether you are a church, and we have churches that are not incorporated at the Corporate Affairs Commission. So they don't fall under the Corporate Governance Code. And now come to think of it, why do people want to enjoy all kinds of privileges by registering their churches and mosques or religious organizations, but when it comes to the responsibility of opening themselves to what they themselves have opted for, to the consequences of what they themselves have opted for, they begin to scream? Now, let me give you an example. If you start a church today as Dele Ayodo, and you register that church with the Corporate Affairs Commission, what you are saying is that this church becomes a corporate entity. In the name of that church, you can buy land, you can own property, you can do all kinds of things. You can get donations from everywhere in the world. But if you open the church as Dele Ayodo Prophetic Mission, okay, and you don't go to the Corporate Affairs Commission, Chienye can wake up tomorrow and say, Chienye Ayodo Prophetic Mission, and register it. It means that any day you want to go and register Dele Ayodo Prophetic Mission, you might not be able to register Prophetic Mission, because that name, the search, when the CAC goes to do search for you, that name is gone. It's been used already. So people, they know these things, they know. But the reason why people are screaming is that they're not sincere. Some of these people who scream, their hands are not clean. Because they eat people's money in the churches. They don't want other people to come and open the books in the churches.
Some of the defense I've heard since this argument started, which I want to draw you into, is that churches or religion is a spiritual thing.
Yeah, it is.
And then you cannot come with mortal hands to delve into it. So leadership of those bodies should be decided spiritually, not by any code from any government or elsewhere.
I agree with you to some extent. To the extent that if you don't want mortal hands in spiritual things, these spiritual entities too should stay away from mortal lucre.
Okay, then what then is the solution? What then is the way out of this religious crisis?
Well, I think the way out for us is on a more serious note, to have more love among ourselves, one, to deal with fellow human beings as part of humanity, not as what they believe in. Let anyone believe what they want to believe. If you want to preach to people, preach to them, convince them. But that shouldn't lead to any crisis. Another thing is, government should please stay away from religion as much as possible.
And again, let's try and clear this issue. You just mentioned it. She registered prophetic mission, then which makes her the owner of that mission. Shouldn't she be guaranteed a life leadership of that mission? Why should anybody be at all? Then again, you just talk of the mix of the Democrat become she's not the one running it alone. She's collected aids, assistance, donations for other persons. Should others not also enjoy the privilege of ruling that church or prophetic mission at a point?
Yeah.
Should it be a life leadership thing?
You see, I don't want to name churches, but you know that we've had churches in
unfortunately, we are just saying church. We are looking at all
religious organizations. I agree with you. Not
I apologize to anybody.
No, wait, okay.
He just said he's a Christian, so he's the one who is attacking churches.
No, I'm not attacking churches. I'm not attacking churches. I mean, we're just looking for how to make life better for everyone and have peace in our society instead of all these crises we have here and there. Now, when you register a religious organization or any organization, if it's a charity, it means number one, it doesn't pay tax. If it's charities are not expected to pay tax, so you get. I mean, it can even be like when I say charities, it includes some NGOs. I mean, they don't pay tax. So because we expect that you are here to assist people. Okay, and everything you make is towards assisting people. But you see, where this thing baffles me is when leadership becomes more or less a soul affair, an individual affair, or a family affair. If you say, because she's registered this prophetic mission, she should have life leadership, she takes it. When she gets infirm, when she reaches the age of 90 or 100, which I guess Chienye will reach at some point.
Amen.
Now, and she cannot continue, she's not going to look for another ordinary member of the group. She looks for a son, a daughter, her husband.
In-law?
Oh, yes, or husband-in-law. Is it husband-in-law or sister-in-law, brother-in-law, or something-in-law? And then that's the thing. But no one talks because we believe, no, it's spiritual. What spirit is it that does not look for anyone else except a member of your family?
Continuity.
Continuity.
I own the prophetic mission, so it should run around the family. But that is where it's gotten wrong, really. That's where it's gotten wrong, really.
So, in this kind of situation, how do you think government should tackle? We're also going into this tax.
Government is not even tackling the tax issue. You're talking about the tax issue. No, honestly, I mean, I don't believe churches as churches. I don't believe churches should pay tax. But where churches go into business, those businesses should pay tax. Take, for example, if you have a church and your church sells pure water, and there's a tax for pure water sellers, your pure water company, not your church now, but the pure water company, you see, people incorporate the church.
But these are subsidiaries of the church.
If they are subsidiaries, the church should not pay tax, but those subsidiaries should pay tax. We shouldn't just change ourselves. We shouldn't just change the state.
Okay, should they have concession? Yes, you said they can pay tax, but sometimes should they have special tax rate?
What concession? Because if your church sells pure water, or your mosque sells pure water, and I buy pure water from other people at 10 naira, and I also buy yours at 10 naira, you're not giving me any concession in price. So you shouldn't get any concession. You see, when people ask for concession, especially when you ask for tax reliefs, and there are guidelines. Go and look at the guidelines. If you meet the guidelines for tax relief, you will get it. But if you don't meet you don't meet the guidelines for any relief, I don't think you should get that relief simply on the basis of the fact that you are a religious organization.
Okay, then what is the responsibility of the religious bodies? What are they doing? Are they just there as figureheads?
No. I mean, religious organizations have responsibilities. Number one responsibility is for them to win souls. And two is to win souls for God. That's number one responsibility. Number two responsibility would be to seek people's salvation. And number three responsibility would be to make society better, preach morals, preach the kind of relationship that makes society better.
And has it helped anything going by the religious crisis that happen on a daily basis?
Yeah, the ones we see here, we have religious organizations that are too aggressive, and we must be sincere with ourselves. Instead of talking about salvation, there's no scripture. Is it the Quran? Is it the Bible? Is it even the Grail message? All these things. There's no single scripture that preaches violence. I've read some scriptures, some of them in translation, but I've not seen anyone where violence is what is preached. At times people talk about some groups preaching violence and things like that, but that's not. That's from interpretations that people give to the scriptures. That's not what the scriptures say.
All right, yes, we will have to take the break to allow the national news to come at 10 o'clock. When we come back, Dr. Jendele Hungbo will still be with us. We'll be looking at how to cement the seemingly growing gap between the different religions that exist in Nigeria. Don't go anywhere.
In the meantime, begin to turn in your messages, your contributions to the short code dial 32120.
You are welcome there back, and thanks for still being there listening to Rock City 101.9 FM in the city of Abeokuta, the voice of the people, Citizens Forum this morning, trying to profess solutions to some of those identified crises in the country. Religion, without pretending, is one major issue that could tear the society apart, is creeping gradually into homes, into our community, into our society, into groups as we speak. And if something drastic, urgent, and serious is not done, as Professor Shorinka has warned us, we may be facing a serious one. In actual fact, the United Nations projection in the next 5 years says Nigeria and some other countries are likely going to face that threat of division as a result of religion and terrorism. They said it's going to grow. It's not likely to succeed. Yes, to reduce. That is going to grow, and the signs are there here in the country. And we are with our Dr. Jendele Hungbo doing this together. So, Jendele, let me ask you, we've been talking grammar, like some people will say, analysis and so, but practicals now, reality. Do you think any Nigerian leader, governor, president, councillor will climb the podium on the campaign ground and say, forget my religion. I don't care if you're a Muslim, I don't care if you're a Christian. I'm going to that. You think that person will get a vote?
The person will get a vote.
In this Nigeria?
Yes.
How?
Okay.
Where?
I mean,
from who?
okay. Now it's
when the analysis, the statistics is
yes.
Okay. The number of Christian churches, okay,
yeah.
Produce social number.
Yes.
Will give me social number.
Yes.
The vice candidate, the what do they call the deputy, must be so to catch the vote of
exactly.
Religion.
Do you know why I believe that we will still come back to our senses at some point? Remember in 1992-93, during the SDP NRC thing, when the SDP came up with Abiola and Kingibe, people thought the Muslim ticket was not going to work. But it worked. They won the election. Abiola was a Muslim.
Sorry, hold on. Remember this Dele, and yes. It's you know what is what in 2015.
Yeah.
When APC, Buhari, Tinubu, and some other names were being mentioned.
Yeah.
And how that died.
Wait. You see, before 1993, the argument was that no. If you have a Christian president, you should have a deputy to be Muslim. If the Muslim is going to be president, his deputy should be Christian and things like that. But that is one major disservice that Babangida did to Nigeria and himself. If that election had not been annulled, perhaps we would have grown out of these primordial sentiments that continue to give us problems. Now, we will still get to some point when we will realize that this idea of I want to vote for this person because he's a Christian, or I want to vote for this person because he's a Muslim, or because he's a Buddhist, or because he attends my church, or because he belongs to my denomination, we will come to the realization that it's not going to work. It's not going to help us.
Realistically, since 2011,
yeah.
Election, presidential and government elections across the country were fought on religion. Remember the Goodluck Jonathan sentiment, the 2015 Buhari sentiment. All these elections, the last two elections were fought largely on religion.
No, I think I want to disagree with you a little bit there, because if you look at the Jonathan presidency, it was fought more on two things: sympathy, one, and ethnicity. It was much more of the question of, oh, the Niger Delta deserves the presidency of Nigeria. That was one. The second point of sympathy, yeah, the one on sympathy was because some people rose to the defense of Jonathan because they felt when he deserved the presidency, there was a cabal that wanted to deny him of that opportunity. That was when Yar'Adua died. Because the Constitution recognized the fact that if the president dies, his vice should step into his shoes. And when Yar'Adua died, there was a cabal that wanted to prevent Jonathan from becoming president. And that was where Jonathan began to get our sympathy. What that says is that there are still a few people in this country who still believe in sanity. And the and the number might grow. And that's where the question of the followership comes in. We should begin to define ourselves. We should begin to define the kind of country we want. We should begin to define the kind of citizens we want to be. So even if they continue with the pattern we saw in 2015, and mark my word, 2015 was not totally because of religion. It was because people were tired of a particular pattern of running of the country. So even if Buhari were a Christian, maybe people would have voted for APC all the same.
All right, let's permit our listeners to be a part of it. Let's get their contributions, comments, questions for you, Dr. Jendele, if there are any, as we open the three medium of communication: the telephone, the SMS. I believe you will have been sending those messages, and the tweet. The telephone number 0809 86 87344 and 0909 146 9670 are to be used.
And the short code dial 32120. Type rock, you leave a space, type your contribution, your questions, include your name, it's very important, and then you forward it to 32120. And also the Twitter handle at Rock City FM,
Okay, let's see who goes first.
Hello.
Good
morning.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I'm Sulaiman Jima from Odessa.
Thank you.
Yeah, morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Morning.
Yeah, I want to ask a question. Hello.
Yes,
Jima, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I want to know why some pastors want many people to join their religion before they solve their problem. If I go for anything to ask to do to solve my problem, they will say I need to ask Jesus Christ before the problem. Is that right, sir?
Okay, we'll take it there, but I'm sure that Jendele is not a pastor.
Not a pastor.
Maybe he's experienced. I understand the question.
I think I do too.
But okay, let's take another one. Hello.
Okay, Pastor Jendele.
Hello, morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Dele.
Morning.
Good morning, my sister.
Good morning.
Jendele, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Dr.
My name is Dr. Nkong. I'm calling from Assurance State. Jendele, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Welcome back.
sir.
Welcome back. Dele, I wish you had cut this religious issue into three segments because there are too many things to talk about. But I will go about religion and governance. Wole Soyinka was absolutely correct that if we don't tame religion will finish us in this country. And every Nigerian believes religion is God. Because I belong to Redeem, so I'm in God. So because I belong to Winners, because I belong to this Black Tabernacle, religion is a means of getting to God. And because, as Jendele said, we over-celebrate leadership of these churches, and some of them believe they're even God themselves. The way they even talk, the way they dismiss as if they are God themselves, they put themselves to God, because of the way we over-celebrate these GOs, leaders, apostles, and whatnot. And they don't stress that they are not God. They are not. They are a means to God. If you listen to the sermon given by an Anglican clergyman during the carol service, I wish they can play that thing back again. For most Christians, I'm a Christian, would listen to what that man said, then we will not have any problems. We are all one. We are worshiping God. For goodness sake, if you want to worship sick, that is your business. Why are you coming to disturb me? That I must be this, I must be that, I must be that. Your own is better. Then it is so bad in our institutions that when some people start work by 8 o'clock, they pray from 8 to 10. Praise worship. In government hospitals, you can't meet them. After that praise worship, they eat and relax and sleep up before they start work. Work starts by 10. That's why they thought they place by 8 o'clock. Because they are doing praise worship. They don't do praise worship in houses. Their pastors never tell them. Do praise worship. Give unto God what is God. Give unto Caesar what is happening. The reason is government has failed. That is why. You won't see that type of thing in Britain. You won't see in the United States. You won't see in South Africa yet. All these things you are doing here. It's because government has failed us. You put on your switch and let the Lord praise the Lord. And America will never say that. Will never say that. Praise the Lord because the water is flowing at up. Because there is failure. We have nowhere to turn to. We go to the invisible. This is what happened in United UK. Very no, pray for the patient in the hospital. She was sorry, and I was so happy about it. They told her, go back to Nigeria, do your prayer there. We don't do it with treat patients. I can go on and on, but let me just stop here because there's not want to funny. But let me just stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let's take another call. Just take notes. We will give you time to respond.
Hello, good morning.
Yes,
Good
morning.
Good morning.
Doctor, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Kolawole Onisfadi Joseph. Sir, I think we need to identify our problem before we talk about solutions. Where do we get it wrong? I'm not saying Muslim is not good, and I'm not saying Christian is not right. Sir, the number one country in the whole world serves idol. Yet they live together. They live in peace. People should be godly, but yet we are not. You say invite these people to build our roads, to build our bridges. Huh? Each and everyone in Nigeria, each family in Nigeria, has its our own religion. Mine is Ifa. Mine is Ifa. Dele, you have your own. Chienye, you have your own. Doctor, you have your own. Sir, when God created heaven and earth, when he wanted to send Jesus, he sent Jesus to a particular country. Then he sent Muhammad to a particular country. You see, when we don't appreciate what God gave unto us, these are what we get in solution instead of what we do in Nigeria. Sir, we are putting it wrong. Hello?
Yes,
Yeah,
we're with you.
Hello?
Yeah.
We're with you. We can hear
Hello?
you.
We can hear you, Kola Ole, even though you are approaching
Yes,
2 minutes.
we are putting it wrong.
You are
We
approaching
need
2
to
minutes.
trace back ourselves and get it right.
All right.
Thank you
Jesus,
very much.
God sent Jesus and Muhammad to Pakistan. But interestingly, Jesus sent the two of them to the same area. So maybe that's why it is just the two of them.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hope I'm not. All right, let's take this call and then we allow Dr. Jendele to respond. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, my name is Comrade Mr. Egwuonwu on the line. Hello.
Hello, yeah.
We're with you. Good morning. And thanks
Dr.
for joining us.
Jendele, I want to welcome you and I want to greet you.
Thank you very much, Arwoko.
Yes, I'm enjoying your analysis. Yes, talking about this religion of a thing. People say religion is the opium of the people. But it's just a pity that founder of this religion, Christianity and the Islam and other, religious belief founders, they came with a good teaching. But it's a pity the followers have distorted, these teachings. They have bastardized and jeopardized it. They have turned it upside down. That is the problem we are having. That's why we don't tolerate ourselves in this country. When we get to heaven, there is nothing like Muslim or Christian. There is nothing like deeper life or regime. So there is need for us to have this religious tolerance, and that will take me to.
How do you know? How do you know this, Jendele?
No, it's not
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
How do I know what?
That when you get to heaven,
There is no Christian
there is no deeper life.
Maybe he's been in heaven before. You never
You know,
get
the Bible says when we get to heaven, we shall be like him. We shall all be one. So I have scripture to back it up.
Okay.
You know? Yeah, after all, I was once a pastor. Anyway,
Then why did you stop being a pastor?
let's make it a discussion for another day.
Okay.
Yes. So this issue of religious fanaticism, jingoism, and extremism, it has really done us a lot of damage in this country. Look at what is happening in southern Sudan, southern part of Kaduna. The government said that it has nothing to do with religion on that own. But the people there, we cannot weep more than the belief. They are saying that it has religion on that own. So there is need for us, for all the religious leaders to come together and orientate, educate, and conscientize their followers, their adherents, or the need for us to accommodate to ourselves, to live as brothers and sisters, because most of this religious indoctrination is the reason why we have terrorism in this country. Can you imagine some Christian religious sects have started having their own militancy? So what are we talking about? So religious tolerance is the answer. Well done.
All right. Okay. Can we add one call to it, and then after that we'll
Sure,
move
we
away?
can.
Okay. Let's.
Okay, we lost that call.
All right. 0809868734.
Good morning. We have someone
yes,
now.
morning. You are on.
Thank you, Dele. Good morning. Good morning, my sister.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Jendele. This is Kalbi.
Good morning, Kyrie.
Better. You see, yes, I think religion will kill Nigeria if not jealously guided against all negative features you have iterated or rated earlier. In fact, money matter is the basis, the most matter of all others that follows like that, like we have enumerated. You see, a particular believer, let me tell you, is a kind of endangering species of destruction of lives that can spend a fortune to get to the root of destruction of lives and properties. Look at what happened in Maiduguri yesterday. You see, some believers think that they can fight for God on behalf of God to get to heaven or to get to Ayodo. I don't know. You see, they thought that to be heard is the best thing to get to heaven. To fight those who do not believe you and slay them is the best thing to get to heaven. I don't know where they have cultivated that idea, but you can imagine now that money matter and the kind of belief you have leads you to become a terrorist. Most of these people that hide under the religion or whatever, they all, they're supposed to be probably. See, we need to have a kind of technology that can probably map them out in a certain particular area where they can, they are always hiding. And in fact, you can imagine that the original young believer of worship will now tell you that if you don't believe in his own whatever, you will not get to where you are, the heaven, just like some other callers said. You see, the issue of terrorism, I do not see it as a kind of politics at all, rather than religion. You see, we are ready to assist one another. If some people that are in our area, we can be able to expose them. We will be assisting one another if we could be able to tolerate and probably be sincere and honest with one another. But how many of us can be honest enough? We will now be saying that we don't want anybody to probably see us as being the one asking for people, showing that some people are just strangers in our society. Yes, I don't know. The more sincere we are and ready to show respect for others, we can get out of this kind of mess that is facing us now. This ugly thing that is facing us. The way out is for us to respect ourselves. If we don't do that, there's no way we can go. How far we can go, rather. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move away from the telephone, Dr. Jendele.
Yeah, I thank the callers. Sulaiman, he wanted to know why pastors would ask you to convert to their religion before they assist you. Yeah, it's a very interesting question to ask. Maybe it's part of the soul winning approach to their own form of evangelism, and maybe there's also, it depends on what the pastor is looking for.
and what kind of
assistance you want from the pastor. It's also a question about thy faith make the whole. I know some pastors will tell you that first of all you have to have faith, and maybe before you have that faith you need to convert. I don't know. It's a personal choice. So if a pastor asks you to do that, and you want to make that personal choice to be converted, that's left to you. But if you don't also want that choice, you can negotiate your way out.
Maybe we should simplify it this way. If you go to the clinic, the hospital, for the doctor to examine you, he takes you into the ward. The doctor will not.
Okay, keep you in the ward first.
Yes. So it's right in the word that you now say,
so you should be
take off your check. Let me check this.
You, and then
so the doctor will not just begin to check you outside.
Or even ask you to pay for consultation fee first.
Maybe
okay, that's no problem. Dr. Hungbo raised very fundamental issues, and I want to thank him for bringing those kinds of perspectives into the issue. See, we disrespect ourselves, and we also disrespect government. We are not sincere. Look at the example of the praise worship that he gave. You even go into banks, private business, and you are kept waiting at the door of the bank because the bank staff they are doing praise worship. And that praise worship is part of the opening hours. Happens within the opening hours of the bank. We're getting things wrong, seriously. Now, you also go to government offices, and someone who is supposed to be at the desk Monday morning at 7:30 or 8 o'clock is coming in at 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock because she went for Good Morning Jesus. Those are things that we should seriously try to see what we can do about them. You can worship your God. You can even spend the whole week doing your praise worship, but let it not be when you are supposed to be at work.
You should not,
and you shouldn't also use that too. Even people, directors in offices, kind of silently cajole their subordinates to attend their churches. And those who attend, those who go to church or go to Salatu or things like that, as a result of those kinds of influences, they're not going there to worship God. They're not going there because it's simply because they just want to satisfy their bosses, expecting that they would get certain privileges in return. So that's not a sincere way to worship. Kola said we got it wrong. Well, we maybe not completely yet, but because now the moment we begin to identify these wrongs and we are ready to do a reorientation of ourselves, then things will get better. Ariwoko, his quote about religion being the opium of the people. That's a Marxist ideology, and of course, I agree in part with what Karl Marx says, but it's not religion per se that is that opium. It is the way you use religion. That's when it becomes an opium. Because religion is, when Marx was saying this, he was looking at religion purely as a form of indoctrination. Okay, so if you can escape that indoctrination, it might not be that opium. Kayode said we need to guard against negative things and money matters. That's a big thing. I don't know how we're going to do that.
Can we add the tweets and SMS to this, please?
Yes, we have lots of them here. We have this one. Good morning to you all. Recently, I saw in the dailies the Association of Muslim Lawyers, and then by tomorrow it will be the Association of Christian Lawyers. Government should take note.
Of course, we have those are not new. We have Association of Christian Journalists.
Yes.
We have even in the within.
Okay, moving on. The issue of religion is very fundamental in Nigeria. Nigeria will be destroyed by religion. A section of the country believes that Islam should be embraced by all, and then they have vowed to implement it with the last drop of their blood. But the composition of the cabinet of the current government speaks volume, and nothing is done in Nigeria on merit but on religion. We must rise up, demolish every religious infrastructure and fundamentalists as well as extremists. This is from Kenny Additional from Ashiro, who turned in that one. Then for Larry for Ilori, It is unfortunate that despite the fact that it is enshrined in the country's constitution that Nigeria is a secular state, you can see that there is no separation between the state and religion, hence one of the reasons for the backwardness of the country. What sense does it make for the government to be sponsoring citizens to pilgrimage in Israel and Saudi Arabia, in a country that's secular in nature? What's the yardstick used in erecting mosques and churches at Murtala Muhammad Airport? We're deceiving ourselves if we believe Nigeria is a secular nation. As it is done in advanced and progressive countries of the world, there should be separation between the state and religion. That's from Folari Ilori, the Moshood Arilojo. I think it's religion rascality when someone slaps somebody and calls it Holy Ghost slap, and subjecting a human being to an animal. For instance, a reverend used to serve by a naked female, and that particular reverend also burns a female church member alive. Okay, then we have this next message. I am Akinleye, real one. These are my questions. How many churches or mosque members can afford a university? And how many of them is ready to help the poor? Okay, those are questions coming from Akinleye. Then there's very one. I am surprised when some learned people talk. How else do you describe a religion which says, and then he says he doesn't want to quote the exact verses, you should fight against those who do not believe in its God, or cease and slay those who leave the religion and also refuse to come back. How do you interpret this? That's a question from Olu Ade. Then switching on to the tweets. Ademefun Abiodun, there are only two kinds of people in the world, irrespective of religion, the good and the bad people. Ajibola, like the current leaders that brought change. Churches and mosques are guilty of this offense, but there is a mosque in Adigbe that they're outside speakers. The religious, okay, we have this one from Bright Olowole. The religious bodies have contributed enormously to the totality of our problems, and so they focus on making money. They should be taxed. Adeniji, one way to bridge the gap in our religious differences is to tolerate ourselves as humans, irrespective of our religious group. Ahmed, the tour planners, were giving these guys ego. Obviously, they are protecting their business. If they are called to serve, are their families also called to? Then Banting, poverty breeds illiteracy and ignorance begot accepting all what your spiritual heads told you. And then he goes on to say that tackle poverty and see people believe less in the spiritual heads. Yemi Da Vinci, religion is the opium of the people. The twin evils of poverty and religion is used by ruling classes to keep talakawas down. I don't know what that means. Then he can.
That's the less privileged in outside Talakawas.
Okay.
The
then
less privileged people.
Okay, then he's asking this question, Dr. Jendele. Do you agree that if 40% or more Nigerians become atheists, the country will be much better in 2 years? Yes or no? Then churches then churches and Islamic organizations have reportedly been used to launder money out of Nigeria. The FRSC law is very logical. Donald's on clothing. Dr. Nkam said it all. Religion is a means of getting to God. We humans will remain human, therefore getting it wrong every time. Akorede Camila Debayo. Somebody asked, where did we get it wrong? I think we got it wrong the moment we could differentiate. We couldn't differentiate between religion and politics. What we need now is reorientation of our people. We're too blinded to issues, all in the name of religion, despite our bad attitudes.
All right, Dr. Jendele, you want to react to some of these?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of make a few general comments on some of the questions and the tweets that you got. I mean, let's start from the point of the person who talked about association of Christian, Muslim lawyers. And I said at the beginning, I said, Christian journalists, atheist journalists, maybe one day we'll get that. Now, when people use religion as a refuge for mediocrity, You see, why do you need to form an association of Muslim journalists if you know that you trust yourself as a journalist, first and foremost? I mean, you don't need to. Are you going to be reporting Islamic stories only? Or if you are a Christian journalist, are you going to be reporting Christian stories only? I mean, your profession is your profession. You don't need to bring all this. And
I know there is a religious association like that in the Nigerian Customs Service.
Really?
Yes, I can tell you that I know.
In the Nigerian Customs Service?
Yes.
Maybe very soon we'll have association of Christian soldiers, Muslim soldiers, and things like that.
I know. I've attended a function like that.
Interesting.
Yes, association of social custom officers.
Now, Folani talked about the question of separating the state from religion from the state. I mean, talk about the spiritual separately and talk about the secular separately. And the person talking about Holy Ghost slap, I don't know what it means. I mean, but those are kinds of things that we should begin to question. We should question our religious leaders when they do wrong. We should also question our political leaders when they do wrong. There's nothing wrong in you challenging your spiritual leader at times if you need explanation as to some of the things they do, which you do not agree with. And one critical question that somebody asked, will it help us if 40% or 60% of the country becomes atheist? I mean, it's not about atheism or about whether you are this particular religion or you are that particular religion. What we are saying is that we should all see humanity as humanity. We should see ourselves as human beings first and foremost. Don't look at the other person first and foremost as, oh no, I'm not going to eat with you because you are a pagan. I'm not going to go to the same school with your child, or my child is not going to go to the same school with your child because you are Muslim. I mean, when we were going to high school in Ogun State here, I attended a Roman Catholic secondary school, and I learned how to recite Al-Fatiha in that school. It's a Roman Catholic school, and there was no problem. Every Friday it was a Muslim service on the assembly, and every other day it was Christian, and nobody bothered about anything. And then everyone had his own.
That takes me to this question, Jendele, quickly. I'm trying to manage the time. Radicalization and indoctrinizing somebody into a particular religion. How do they make it possible?
Yeah, I mean, the factors responsible for radicalization, especially of the youth, are very many. I mean, we don't have enough time to talk about all those today. But let me point out that the younger people who get radicalized do so because they have no alternatives that are better than the negatives to which they are introduced. And that's why we keep talking about the agency of government. It's very, very important. You cannot leave a large percentage of the youth to wander around town doing nothing. If you allow them to wander around, people will get them radicalized and they will become a problem for society. That's number one. But those who radicalize the people, I think those are the ones I want to address. The reason why they are radicalizing the youth to become extremists or to become terrorists is not because they want to win their souls for God. You want to win the soul of a 7-year-old girl for God, and what you ask that child to do is to blow up herself. That for me is ungodly. If you want to win a soul for God, because we all the religions, when they talk about evangelism, they're talking about how the faith would grow, how more people will come into the fold. And now as far as I'm concerned, the 7-year-old is a minor. It's an innocent soul. She doesn't know anything. She probably did not even know the implication of what you wanted her to do. So those are critical issues that we need to begin to address. And the question is, what amount of intelligence the government itself have on these potential hotspots, this dangerous extremism, the people who preach these kinds of ideas, the people who so indoctrinate people, where do they get the ideologies from? That's number one. Two, where do they get their fundings from? Where do they get all the things they use? Where do they get them from? Those are critical issues we need to begin to address. And if we don't address these kinds of issues, we're just going to continue to grope in the dark.
Let's go back to the SMS and the tweet.
Okay, we have this tweet from Engineer Benedict. What is happening in Nigeria and the world at large are signs of end time. Then we have this message: religion will kill us in Nigeria. No amount of prayers will take you physically from the earth to the outer space and beyond. Developed countries of the world pay down on religion, and they're making it, and here we are in Nigeria. Adeboye is an applied mathematician, and Kumuyi is also a mathematician, but religion has taken them away from mathematical and scientific discoveries. What a great loss. Nigeria will never develop if we continue this way. That's from Agbola AAA. Then Akin Omobaba. There's difference between religion and the religious leaders. Religion is very pure, nothing wrong with it. Let our government stand to their responsibility. Then Muslims call Olodumare, Christians also call Olodumare, idol worshippers call Olodumare. So who is this Olodumare? We're just fooling ourselves. Akolawale Joseph sent in the message. And then from the tweets, we have this from John Adeolu. Religion is replacing logic and intellect with mediocrity, fake faith, preaching more of the diversions and doctrines and less of God. Moral is being murdered. Okay, that's from John Adeolu. We return to the calls now. That's
All
it
right,
on the.
let's see. I'm sure there are just 2 calls, max. Hello?
Hello,
Hello?
we have you. Good morning.
Hello, you are on. Good morning. All right, let's take the other line then.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Yes,
Good
morning.
morning.
Good morning, my brother Dele and my sister there. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, I listened to you with rapt attention, and I think I'm carried away by your analysis. But the problem with this country, concerning religion, you see, is this, you mentioned it by passing, this militancy or radicalism or something like that. And I believe Chuyinka said the obvious. I don't believe he heard in his passion. Because this problem has been lingering on for quite some time now, particularly killings. And then our leaders, they don't watch their public utterances, religious leaders, and even as the political leaders too. Go to social media, you will see so many things going on there. Some people are saying, no, the killings will continue until so, they become so. I mean, with all these things, if they cannot, they should deny it. And I believe this particular crisis we are talking about, we are praying that it doesn't disintegrate this country. It is very necessary for all our leaders to be watchful, to be careful the way they talk publicly. They do not need to incite people. And well, as far as I'm concerned, we are sitting on a gunpowder. When you consider the massacre going on, particularly in Southern Kaduna now, it happens almost all
approaching 2 minutes.
So this has to be stopped. When we have a government, and that government should be put on alert.
Thank you.
It has the responsibility to stop that massacre. If it doesn't, then some people will not take to defend themselves.
Thank you.
All right, it's the last call.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good
Yes,
morning.
morning.
Yeah, this is Ayodo from Abeokuta.
All right, Ayode, let's do this in 2 minutes. Obviously, the last call for the day.
Thank you. My contribution this morning is that if we have a system that broadens the mind of an average Nigerian, I think it will be difficult to indoctrinate. If our educational system is working and is building the mind, we won't have a situation whereby people will be easily indoctrinated and they begin to follow people. Because in my opinion, most people they are not really following God. They just follow men who pretend to tell them about God. Why can't we do the needful and seek that God ourselves instead of seeking men that will take us to God? I don't know if this is as a result of maybe our traditional beliefs, whereby you believe there should be a deity that will link you up to God. Maybe that is why we have found ourselves in this situation. I think we should begin to learn to seek out God ourselves. and run away from this indoctrination. This is my humble submission this morning.
All right, thank you. Thank Dr. Jendele. Maybe in 2 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I think the caller who didn't mention his name, he said very interesting things about, I mean, Shoyinka saying the obvious, and I think that's what Shoyinka has said is that's a responsibility of a public intellectual, is to call the attention of society to things that are likely. I mean, that's like an early warning sign to all of us to be on guard and be careful. Because I mean, if saying that it's quite obvious that the way we are going about issues of religion in this country is not really going to help the country in the near future. And all these kinds of progressions into chaos every time. It's not doing us any good. Now he also talked about the question of the social media, which is very critical. I mean, people misuse social media quite a lot. You have a lot of misinformation going out there, even where things have not happened. People cook up stories. They go and bring pictures, old pictures from other countries, show people's heads that have been severed off and things like that, and claim this is what is happening here. I think we need to use social media responsibly. And then, like I said, the leaders have to be very careful about things they say. Not only religious leaders, even political leaders. Because political leaders at times say things that are very inciting. And then we need to move away from all this. And then I'm very pleased with this submission that we need to broaden the citizens' minds so that they don't become.
All right, thank you. Let's quickly.
Okay, we wrap it up with the messages and tweets. Yeah. Akin Omobaba, only the professional in religious field can speak about it. You don't condemn what you don't know. There are bad eggs everywhere, including journalism. Therefore, we can tag journalism as a bad profession.
We are actually not.
We're not attacking any profession.
Yes, any religious sect, really.
Then this is from Yemi. Islam is a peaceful religion. If someone is quoting from Quran and refuses to tell us the verse, then it's a no from me. With this type of people, you don't need a fundamentalist. Again, that's from Yemi. Then lastly, for the messages, the Bible says, without Jesus, you can make heaven. This same Bible says you must be loved, while the Quran also says Muhammad is the last prophet.
Without Jesus, you can make heaven.
I'm sure he wanted to say without Jesus, you can't make heaven.
That's what he meant.
Then the prophet also is the last prophet, and he also preaches love. So we must be careful in this country. Michael from Akbete sent in that one.
I think Dele, about the first message that you were talking about. I mean, it's about protectionism. People want to protect their turf. That's when you get these kinds of reactions.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
We can understand those kinds of things.
All right, we must leave the studio now. I'm sure you've enjoyed it. Our guest, Jendele Hungbo, has been able to elucidate many of the issues raised. I say thank you to you, Jendele, for coming as a Nigerian in diaspora.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right. Dele Ayodo is my name. Have a wonderful day ahead.
And I am Chienye Egwuonwu. Let's continue to embrace peace and unity amongst us all and live in peace. I am Chienye Egwuonwu. Good morning.